Selamat Pagi and good morning. This is Jackson Wehrli with another installment of the Selamat Pagi podcast. And in this podcast, we're actually going to go from doing these weekly to instead, I'll do the one about every 6 weeks, and uh, and they'll cover an entire transfer. Okay, so this podcast is going to cover my entire second transfer. A few events leading up to this was Elder Ng and I met with Sister Muna, who's this nice little old lady that, oh, she just sounded like she was mad at you all the time. And she wasn't, that was just the way that she talked. Um, just the most darling old lady, and we'd go over to her house and we would sing with her, sing from the hymn book. And she didn't know any of the hymns, and she was too old to really understand that. And so she would sing every hymn with the same off key tune of some song we had never heard before. And it was hysterical, but it was the sweetest thing. So in this transfer starts, and we had a district meeting. And on our way to district meeting, Sister Leo Pepe, who is from uh, Australia, when I got in the car, well, so Sister Leo Pepe knew that I could do somewhat of an Australian accent, and so when I got in the car to go to district meeting, and she was already in the car because the senior couple was actually taking us. There was a new sister because it was a new transfer, new missionaries, and there was a new sister named Sister Oak. And when I got in the car, Sister La Pepe said, "Oh, Sister Oak, Elder Wehrli is also from Australia." And I was so caught off guard, but I just went with it. And for the entire car ride, I totally had her fooled. I totally convinced her that I was from Australia. And it was kind of funny. We got out of the car, and I had explained to her that I wasn't. But um, on December 24th, uh, on December 24th, Elder Ng and I, um, it was a Sunday, and we went to church, and we visited some members, and we shared some lessons with some people we were teaching. But that evening, on the 24th, he was up in his room because he was the district leader. He was up in his room doing reporting, and I was downstairs drinking hot chocolate, writing in my journal in under the candlelight, after having just watched Mr. Kruger's Christmas, which was a DVD that I found in our apartment, and I was very, very excited to find it because I have watched Mr. Kruger's Christmas just about every Christmas as long as I can remember, and so it was nice. This is this little tender mercy that a copy of this just happened to be in our apartment, and we had this tiny little DVD player that would play one disc, and just all it had was a stop and a start button. Um, and yeah, it was a nice peaceful evening. And so I woke up on Christmas and got Elder Ng up, and it was preparation day. So I got Elder Ng to come downstairs and see what Santa had brought us. And Santa had eaten the milk and cookies, and Santa had left Christmas presents for the both of us. Now you might be wondering, well, I don't believe in Santa. Santa's not real. Well, let me just explain something real quick. You're telling me that my parents bought a ticket to Malaysia, flew to Malaysia, snuck into my apartment. First off, found my apartment, snuck into my apartment, ate the milk and cookies, left presents for us, then snuck out of the apartment, locking the door behind them, got back on a plane, and flew back to my home, where I saw them via Skype call the next day. There's just no way. So now I know Santa is real. Um, and President Monson, he issued a challenge to read the Book of Mormon. And I had thought it was for that year. Turns out it was for the year prior. And I had no idea. So I thought, oh shoot, I have about a month left. And so I read the Book of Mormon that month. Just in 1 month, 30 or the 31 or 30 days of 31 days of December, I read the Book of Mormon. And so that was fun. On Christmas, we went to visit several members. We had a little breakfast and then we got dressed and went off to have brunch with some people we were teaching. After that, we went and had lunch with some members. We were a little bit full. We couldn't really eat a whole lot more. So after that, we went to high tea and had another meal with another member. And after that, we left and we had dinner with another member. And then after that, we left and we had supper with another member. So we had like 5 or 6 meals that day. It was ridiculous. We were so full. Um, I got to video call my parents and say hello. A couple of my friends joined in for that call. It was fun. Um, we did end up going as a whole zone. We brought all the missionaries. We went to this children's home, and you got to kind of be careful when you do things around children as missionaries, just because you don't want anything to be misinterpreted. But all we did was I had a little get together. We sang Christmas hymns and ate cookies, and it was a good time. Um, a lot of these kids have never even seen a white person before, so it was just, it was a neat experience for everyone. But we tried to lift their spirits by singing to them and dancing for them and doing some fun things, and they really got a kick out of that. Um, well, a couple days later, my ATM card got eaten in the machine. And so there was a few days where I didn't have any money, and then they had to actually send me a new card. And Sister Itchy, who's a person that we were teaching, well, one time when we were just dropping by, um, she says, "Hey, do you like durian?" And I had never tried one before, and Elder Ng is from Singapore, so he was like, "Yes, definitely." And so she gave us our first durian, and we took it home and we tried it, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. It was a weird mix of bitter and sweet. It was this weird, fleshy. Oh, I've never tried it before, and so I didn't know how I felt about it. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like it. I wasn't sure. Elder Ng, um, in this week, his bike actually was destroyed by accident. We let some of the kiddos in one of the areas that we would go teaching in ride his bike, and they dropped it, and it totally broke his derailleur, and he had to buy a new one. Um, this transfer, we met with Sister Lisa, who lived way out in the boonies, but she started making our bead ties. Um, she made Elder Ng's tie first because he was leaving first, and this was my first beaded tie, which are very popular in Sarawak to make things with beads. And so Sister Lisa was making our bead tie. And we would go over to her house and we'd teach her and just have a good time. Also, that week, every time we had uh, an appointment or a lesson or something at the church, we'd notice just down the block from the church, very close, not not even 30 yards away, would sit this nice gentleman named Graham. And Graham was from Great Britain, and he had married, I believe, a nice lady from Thailand. And every single night ever, he came to this restaurant. He sat in the same chair, smoked a Dutch pipe, had two beers, and read a book. He was one of the most consistent things ever. And one day, I went up and I talked to him, and we shared some insights and talked back and forth for a bit. And I shared a few things about the gospel, and he was a really nice guy. It was later that there was an appointment where we had to go from one area all the way to the other. So we had to basically bike our entire area. Um, and it was long and hot and miserable. And I wanted to refresh and take a break and then I would be, ready to get back on with things. But Elder Ng just wanted to work without stopping. And so we got into kind of a discussion about um, how we each felt about that. And I had gone towards the house, and then I went into the house, and I noticed that he hadn't come in, and I thought he was just throwing a fit or something. And finally, I went back out to him, and I said, "Hey, why haven't you come in yet?" And he said, "I feel like going inside would be a waste of time." And so we had a discussion, and we both kind of had to be humble and listen and understand the other person's point of view. And so I explained to him that I felt, completely exhausted, and if I just got a minute to, wipe myself down, cool down, wash my face, grab a snack, I'd be back with it and ready to work hard. And if I didn't, I would just be exhausted and miserable, and it wouldn't be as easy on me. And he felt that if we went back into the house, when we'd go back to the house, uh, he felt that it kind of threw off his day. Then for the rest of the day, he kind of was just like checked out. And so we kind of had to come to a some sort of an agreement on how we could do this effectively. Um, but anyway, it was oh, excuse me. It was the most humble that I had seen Elder Ng be up to that point, and so it was very impressive to me. Um, there was in this area a lot of nice Malay ladies who would um, try and marry off their daughters to us. They'd seriously would say, "Oh, you're a handsome boy and you speak Malay really well. How old are you?" You'd say 20, and they'd be like, "Oh, great. Well, if they had a daughter within 5 years younger or 5 years older of you, um, they would say, "Oh, well, my daughter's around that age. Why don't you marry her?" And we'd be like, "That's not what we're doing here. Thanks for the offer, but we're focused on missionary work." I did finish the Book of Mormon right before the year ended, and we met a a nice family led by Stephen. And Stephen he was one of the nicest guys. And we'd go and we'd teach him and we'd teach his whole family. He had the cutest little boy. And we were looking for someone else actually, and came upon him and his family. And after the lesson, he went back into his room and he says, "I got something to show you." And he came back out with like a gospel principles book and his own copy of the Book of Mormon. He had apparently been taught by the missionaries like a while before us, and so it was kind of a miracle that we refound him and we started teaching him again, and it was fun. we did go to Singapore for my first zone conference, and we flew into Singapore, and they had worried me sick about the immigration stuff. And the way the immigration stuff works is in Singapore and in Malaysia, they don't really understand that we are not working there, that we are not being paid, that we are paying to be there. We are helping their economy by using our dollars in their country, and we are not teaching Muslims about the gospel. We are only teaching, uh, the non-Muslims, and we're not breaking any laws, or we're not working. And so they didn't understand that, and so they would think we were stealing their jobs teaching Muslims. They would just misunderstand, and so they'd give us a hard time sometimes in immigration. But they had over exaggerated how intense the situation was, that my first time going through, I didn't know what to do, and so I lied. And I said I was traveling to visit to have like a family reunion or something, and they just totally called me out on it. And after that, I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to lie, I'm just going to tell them the truth. And that's really all you can do. You just explain it to them. You say, hey, look, I'm not making any money. I'm not working. I'm volunteering to be here. Um, it's on my own will. I'm paying. I'm not being paid. Uh, and so yeah. In Singapore, that first day, we got on the MRT, and which is the subway system in Singapore, and it is so efficient. These subway trains, they just go all over the city, and they'll open up, just into a mall. The stations are just right there in a mall or next to one, or they're very convenient. Very, very convenient way of transportation. I love the MRT. Um, and we were in this big mall, and I got myself a dragon fruit because I loved these dragon fruits. But this one I opened up, it wasn't red on the inside, it was white. I was very confused. Dragon fruits are like kiwis, but less sour. They're kind of a dull kiwi, but much larger on the inside, in my opinion. Well, we came out of one of the MRT stations, and it was just pouring rain. It was just drenching in rain. And so there was a lady, and this was at the Newton station, so we were right down the street from the church. There was a lady who obviously didn't want to get wet. She had some nice clothes on, and so I actually, with my companion, ran down to the church, grabbed one of the umbrellas because they just keep some umbrellas on the outside of the church for when it rains. Um, and I ran it to her, and she was very, very grateful. Um, on our way back into Malaysia, they totally misunderstood what we were doing again, and they gave us all 30-day stamps rather than the 90 days for the social visit pass, which is what we usually got. They gave us 30-day volunteer visas, and that was obviously not enough because we needed 90 days for two transfers. And so the only person that didn't get a 90-day visa that did get a 90-day visa was Sister Lil Pepe, and that's because she was from Australia. So it was a mix of racial profiling and all sorts of things. And so, um, but we all got in. It wasn't a big deal. We all got in with 30 days, and the plan was that we would actually have to fly into Brunei, and then fly back or drive back to get the 90 days that we needed, um, and not breaking the law or anything, but just getting the proper stamp, um, just getting the right stamp in our passports. And um, in in this transfer, we got cell phones. Now, the cell phones we all got had to be Samsung phones. We had to download certain apps that would block, internet use and things like that. And so we then had to go through our area books, which were all the records of everybody that had ever been taught and all the members in the whole area ever since the area opened. So this big, thick, thick book of records. We had to manually type all of those into the area book planner online in the phone. And it took hours. It was so hard. But the following, the following preparation day on Monday, I hiked Gunung Serapi with Elder Ng and Elder Mansfield, and we really had a good time. I didn't realize it was against the rules at the time, but I went up to, I just kind of went off with Elder Mansfield and left his companion with Elder Ng. I thought that was okay, but apparently um, those kind of splits are not allowed, and I didn't know that till later. But that's when I really got to know Elder Mansfield, and we really became good friends on that hike, and we told each other all about our girl problems back at home, and you know, talked about missionary work and some fun stuff, and we really had a good time. It was on January 1st that I woke up and I decided that I was going to read the entire Bible from cover to cover. And so I started. I read through all of Genesis, I read through all of Exodus, I read through all of Leviticus, moved on to Chronicles and Numbers, and I was really reading through it. That same place that Graham, the British guy, would eat at down the street from the church, had these nice waffles, and I would always go and get some of these waffles, and they were just so good. Um, I did have an exchange with Elder Taylor. Now, Elder Taylor was a Chinese elder, so I went over to the Chinese two elders, or to the Kuching two branch elders' home, and there was four elders there. Elder Sundberg was with Elder Hapiri, and I got to know them a little bit. But Elder Taylor, his companion was, um, who was his companion at the time? I want to say it was Elder Forsyth. Now, Elder Forsyth, um, let's see, is that right? Yeah, it must have been Elder Forsyth. Elder Forsyth was in my ward uh, when I was a sophomore in high school, living with my grandparents in Holiday, Utah. So that was kind of fun. Um, and anyway, so I was on this exchange with Elder Taylor, and Elder Sundberg just dropped all this music onto my phone, all kinds of music, music that was definitely approved and nice church music and uplifting, and music that I had to delete because it was a little bit distracting. But there was all kinds of music on my phone that he had just acquired from all kinds of different elders over the course of his mission. And I woke up the next morning and they were all praying in the same position with all of their beds lined up in a row, and it was just hilarious. They were all doing this yoga position with their face to the ground. It was just funny. I just woke up the next morning and they were all doing the same position, praying in the same way, all in a row. And I remember writing that down in my journal, like I woke up and they were all praying in yoga positions this morning, but it was just kind of fun. So with this on this exchange with Elder um, Taylor, we actually went to a funeral from a lovely couple who had had a baby, and the baby had just passed away right after birth. And we were going to the funeral, and these were members, and it was a lovely little funeral. And the thing about Malaysia is churches are in charge of graveyards or cemeteries, and Our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, doesn't do that. The church doesn't do cemeteries. We just don't do that. And so a big thing for each convert or for each person learning about the gospel is they always ask if our church has a cemetery. And they in their eyes they cannot join our church if we don't have a cemetery to be buried in. That's part of having a church. And so there was a couple of members in Kuching that put their heads together, put some funds together, and actually went out and bought a plot of land. And so the church in Kuching has a cemetery. It doesn't belong to the church; it belongs to these members technically. Um, but yeah, on our way back from this cemetery, the car in front of us got stuck in the mud, and so we got out to push, and we pushed the car right out. And I kept pushing and following the car till it was out of the mud, but Elder Taylor stopped once the car was moving. So from about waist down, and Elder Taylor from about the top of his head to the soles of his shoes were just drenched in mud, just splattered all over us. And so after the funeral, we had to go back and shower and change. And oh, it was just a very, very funny time. Elder Forsyth gave me some advice about um, how to get along really well with Elder in these last few transfers. And it's not like we weren't getting along. It was just I was a prideful little young missionary, and he wasn't as prideful as I was, but he knew that he was an experienced missionary, and he acted thus. Um, but he had a lot more humility than I did. Um, and so Elder Forsyth gave me some advice on how to, go about dealing with him. We cleaned I'm sorry, not dealing with him, but treating him and talking to him and communicating with him. Um, Elder Ng and I cleaned the baptismal font, and we welcomed Sister Gentia into the waters of baptism. Finally, after so long, Sister Gentia was baptized, and it was the sweetest little funeral. It was the sweetest little baptismal service, and she was baptized by her husband. I was a little bit disappointed that not very many of the members showed up for this baptism, um, but there was a handful. And Sister Gentia was baptized, and it was the first baptism I had witnessed thus far in my mission. Oh, and it was really sweet. I did go on an exchange with Elder Forsyth, and one memorable thing about that exchange was it was the first time he had gone to a kampong. He had spent his whole mission serving in places like Singapore, where there was nice, fancy, bougie, um, wealthy, well kept. And it was the first time, this exchange was the first time he had gone to a kampong, which is a place made of wood. Um, it's just a rundown area given to different tribes of people in Malaysia, and they're really fun. They're really fun, but they're not high end. They are really uh, they are little wood huts, out in the swamp. They're not fancy at all. And so it was his first time seeing one, and it kind of got him thinking, and kind of made him um, I don't know. It was just different for him. It really was. It was different for him, and it was good for him to be out there. And on our way to Kampong, we were going to Kampong Kude. We were going down a hill, and I have ridden down this hill so many times. I just rode my bike down this hill, made it out to the bottom, just had a good time. And we got to the top of this hill, and I said, "Hey, you can ride down, or you can walk down on the stairs." And he said, "Well, I'll watch you. Um, well, watching you go down to see, make sure it's safe, because I'm not just gonna take your word for it, but So I went down, confident as ever. I've done this hill so many times, and I'm going down the hill on my bike, and at the bottom, my bike tires sink into the mud and flip me forward off of my bike face first, and I just went ooh, and went right into the dirt and was just covered in mud. So we had to ride all the way back to our house, change, and then come all the way back to our appointment. It was just, it was hysterical. But I made a little imprint in the mud of my body, kind of like in the cartoons. So that was kind of hilarious that 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 happened. And shortly after that, um, or it was a little before that. Around that time, it was my trip to Brunei, and what we did was I got on a plane and flew to Miri. I spent the day in Miri with the elders. There was Elder Curtis and Elder Nemelka, and who else was there? Elder Johnson was there. Um, yeah, it was a good time. And it was a P day. It was a preparation day, and so we woke up and went emailing. And this is the transfer. This is the email. This is the. Sorry, I'm losing my words here. This is the preparation day that Colin, my friend Colin back at home, emailed me, and I asked him to give me all the spoilers of the new Star Wars movie that had just come out, The Last Jedi, and so he gave me all the spoilers for that, which was nice. Um, and so then we got on a bus and drove, and we bussed into Brunei. Spent the night in a hotel. Woke up the next morning. Got on another bus, which took us to a little city right outside the border. And then we got in a taxi and just rode across the border in a taxi. And so it was a much more casual environment for the visas, and um, they were so polite. They didn't ask us a whole lot of questions. They had a lot more trust in us, and they gave us the visas that we had, or sorry, not the visas. They gave us the social visit passes that we were supposed to get. Uh, and so that was good. So we were able to resolve that issue. But Brunei does not have missionaries, and Brunei is a Muslim country, and you cannot proselyte there. So while we were there, we couldn't wear our name tags. We had to be in regular clothes. We really um, we were not allowed to be missionaries there, and so we weren't. Uh, we were good examples for everybody, but we did not proselyte or share the gospel or tell anyone that we were missionaries. We just weren't allowed to do that, and our church is really big about obeying the law. And so we were good. Now, Elder Ng finished his mission. He finished at the same time Elder Jopius did, and we had a little going away party for him, and Elder Ng was sent off, and well, so I had a when I very first came into the field, I did a day exchange on my first day in Singapore with an elder named Elder Hogan, and he had just the worst lisp I had ever heard. And back then, speech impediments really just got under my skin, and I don't know why, but I just couldn't stand it when people couldn't pronounce their R's or their S's, and that was Elder Hogan's struggle. He had a tough time saying his S's. And I had gotten into a little discussion with Elder Ng, my companion, about whether or not missionaries have the spirit of prophecy. And I thought that they didn't. I thought, no, only prophets do. And he was like, no, we can totally prophesy. And here we were. It was Elder Ng's last preparation day, and I was looking at the new transfer board to see who I was going to be companions with. And I said, before I looked at it, I said, I just know it's going to be Elder Hogan. And I'm going to have to learn to overcome my little pet peeve of speech impediments because I can't hold that against him. It's not his fault. And so before I had looked at it, Elder Ng opened it up and he goes, now I know missionaries have the spirit of prophecy. Guess who's your companion? And I was like, oh no. And I went and looked at it, and sure enough, it was Elder Hogan. Um, and so Elder Ng finished his mission, and I was gonna be with Elder Hogan, and that would conclude my second transfer in the mission field. Thank you so much for listening uh, to this installment of the Selamat Pagi podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I will continue to do these podcasts and try to make them, you know, reasonably long, but um, not too short, not too long. I don't want to bore you to death, but please leave a comment and a like if you made it all the way to the end of this, so that I know who are actually listening to these, um, so I know who my audience is. I thank you very much, and I bear my testimony that I know Jesus Christ lives, and he loves everyone, and I know that this is his church. It just is. It can't not be. Everything in this church points to the Savior and the restoration of his gospel, and I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.